So we're called the Woosh Effect.
The Woosh Effect.
The Woosh Effect,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And you said it the right way, the
yeah.
Woosh Effect. Ultimately, we help our clients grow and scale their businesses through corporate and government contracting. So as a subset, Woosh is really all-encompassing of, how we're walking spiritually, our business life, how we're operating in our personal life. Yeah. Not meaning to say that neither my business, my spiritual, or my personal life is all perfect. Yeah. But we're concerned with the whole person. But a subset to the Woosh Effect is win big bids. Yeah. That's the conglomerate that we have.
All right, guys, welcome to Success on Repeat.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Success on Repeat. Thank you so much for being here. I'm actually at the Wyndham Grand in Clearwater Beach, Florida. It is beautiful here. The sun is shining. As you can see, it's nice and bright outside, and we are blessed to be here. And I am with a very special guest here masterminding with me this week, Miss Alison. How you doing, Miss Alison?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing so well.
Good. Yeah, praise God.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm also excited to be here. So your business, what's the name of your organization?
Well, so we're called the Woosh Effect.
The Woosh Effect.
The Woosh Effect,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you said it the right way, the Woosh Effect. Ultimately, we help our clients grow and scale their businesses through corporate and government contracting.
Okay.
Yes. So we have...
So by you whale hunting.
Well, I guess you could say, you could call it
that. That's my words,
So as a subset, Woosh is really all-encompassing of, how we're walking spiritually, our business life, how we're operating in our personal life. Yeah. Not meaning to say that neither my business, my spiritual, or my personal life is all perfect. Yeah. But we're concerned with the whole person. But a subset to the Woosh Effect is win big bids. Yeah. That's the conglomerate that we have underneath Woosh that's primarily concerned with growing and scaling, through the use of corporate and government contracts.
Yeah. No, I remember seeing you speak at Offer Mastery Live this year.
Unduplicatable experience by far.
No doubt. It was one of those things where your talk was very impactful, from soup to nuts. And I think sometimes in business, success on repeat, right? How do we take the things that successful people do? And, that's Myron Golden's event. And Myron has this whole be, do, have, right?
Absolutely.
Where the first step is to be, right? And so sometimes you hear people speak and what's coming across is the be, right? You're seeing the person, and I think what attracts people sometimes is not just the tactics or the strategies that somebody's giving, but like who the person is, like, wow, which is also the most difficult part to duplicate, right?
Absolutely.
Because you have to become the person. But when you describe, right, the whole person being the important piece, those are the people that I like to deal with. It's just funny because even in our program where we bring on agents and things like that, like low key, my agent program is a discipleship program, right? Like I probably would not advertise it that way. That, hey, by the way, I'm going to teach you how to make money and I'm going to introduce you to the Lord. That may not necessarily be the stated goal of the program, but it's who I am.
Exactly.
So if you're going to come and you're going to learn from me, I'm going to teach you what I learned from the person that taught me, right?
Well, one of the things that I've learned is when you operate against your programming, everything in life becomes that much harder.
Oh, gosh.
So what I've come to learn is I was designed and built for what it is that I do. So ultimately, and I love what you said before in referencing the be, do, have mindset. I think for the longest time, I thought that God was actually calling me to do another thing because he had given me a gift. And that gift was my business. Yeah. And in cultivating what it was that he gave me, it led me to what it is he has called me to do. See, sometimes very similar to like the children of Israel, right? You go throughout the wilderness and you're in there probably, 10 times as long as you should be because you're going to go around in circles until you decide to choose the way that God has for you. And I think that was like my experience.
Yeah.
So like for most people, okay, like our business did over like 21 million last year. I think this year we're about 11 million in the work that we
21
do.
million, right?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Last year's is what we concluded. But the reality is after you solve your money problems and you're still making money, there's no additional value to that.
Yeah. 100%.
And one of the things that became broadly apparent last year, I almost lost my mom.
Oh.
And walking through that experience for me was like incredibly personal to me.
Yeah.
My mom was my VP of HR. We had over 430 something employees at the time that she was all running, and just like that, and she had an issue with a ruptured aneurysm.
Oh.
Less than 1% chance of survival.
Yeah, man,
And going through that process, hundreds of people reached out to me while my mom was sick.
Yeah.
And it made me realize, wait a minute, if I got sick tomorrow, nobody's reaching out for me like that.
Yeah.
Right? And it was almost like a paradigm shift in a way that I learned a lesson very quickly, that my mother had lived her life serving other people. And although I had grown up in the church my whole life, and I knew and I understood the purpose was to give and the purpose was to serve.
Sure.
I think I was only serving me and my family. But I didn't really necessarily look to serve people that I didn't know. And, there's a lot of things that we learn from our mentors and people that we grow with. But that was the lesson that I had learned.
Yeah.
Because immediately thereafter, thank God my mom is perfect now. She's fine.
Yeah, praise God. And you're 1% usually, right, that survive on an aneurysm, right?
Less than.
Wow.
I mean, with her.
That's like one of those things where it's like a brain aneurysm.
Well, and that's just survival. That's not talking about, their cognitive experience.
The brain damage
the best hope was that she would have been in a vegetative state. So you could imagine, we got rid of our stuff, moved her into my house, but something happened where I realized that money is a very spiritual thing. Right? My ability to be able to just take care of my mom on a whim. I wanted everybody I know to have that experience and to have that opportunity. And too often, especially women. Now, women are the caretakers of the world.
Sure.
And anytime anything goes wrong with anyone, the first expectation is that the wife will be the one to care for their parents, care for the children, care for any ails that happen within, the household situation. And I just realized I want everybody that I know that exists within that realm or that's dealing with that circumstance to be able to simply remedy their money problems with money. So that they can focus more so on their spiritual and personal development.
I don't know actually who said this originally, but my brother Manny always tells me, he says, money only solves the problems that not having money causes.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting about solving money problems is once you get, like you said, once your business gets to a certain point where you've solved the money problems, right? Which, money still creates its own sets of problems, right? But the ones that, where you're actually worried about is the lights going to get turned off or am I going to be able to stay in this house
and that was my reality for a long time. Growing up where I grew up in the heart of Newark, New Jersey, for the first, 10, 12 years of my life and experiencing that level of poverty. Yes, our lights were turned off. Occasionally, yes, we had our water turned off. So going through that experience, the only thing I wanted to do was ensure that I would never have to go through that experience again. So, but it's almost one of those things where the pendulum swung too far to the opposite end.
To the other direction.
Right. So, but going through that cycle of what I went through where my mom was on the brink of death and then coming right back around to where she's totally not on the brink of death. She's perfectly fine now. I had to stop and ask God, why did you allow me to go through that? Why did you allow me to experience that? And, it's funny because this whole concept of whoosh, it's something that ever since childhood I had experienced God constantly probing in my life. right? And it would always just happen. It would just always happen like that. It would be like almost like a setup.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden a whoosh experience, right? So, and it's something that me and my girlfriends
Is that like that concept of like overnight success, 10 years in the making, right?
Exactly.
Like when success
like that,
happens, it happens fast.
That 10-year, that like only by looking back does everything in your life begin to make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Whoosh.
And everything that you've gone through begins to make sense.
Yeah.
And so like where I am today, like, so we have our Win Big Bids Challenge, we have our Win Big Bids Mastermind, master classes, so on and so forth.
So you help, so I mean, you gave me the understanding of what doing what you do has done for you. It has created the ability that when the problem arises, money isn't the obstacle that you're having to overcome.
Exactly.
Because I think many times people struggle so much with money that they don't have time to tackle the other obstacles, right? They're so busy focused on the money part of it.
But see, that's how the enemy would have it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The enemy would have it so that you're wrapped around and you're worried about this when really your personal development and your spiritual development,
That's right.
these are the two that the law hang on.
Yeah.
And this is
That's right. That's right.
This is where your focus should be.
Right.
But he gets you so caught up where you're wrapped around, these items and you're going around in circles that your whole life could pass you by and you never focus on that area, developing that relationship with your maker and developing that relationship with your fellow man.
Yeah.
To the point where you are becoming.
Yeah.
Right? Like you are actively becoming and you're more so aware of it.
Right.
So
And intentionally becoming.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for me, for the longest while, I was intentionally working towards building my business and doing that for the sake of me, but not necessarily for the sake of others.
Yeah. And then so now that you've had that light switch flip, now you have all of these ways that you can help other people flip the same switch, it sounds like. So you said Win Big Bids Challenge, which leads into the Win Big Bids Mastermind.
Well, so if you want to think of it like this, the Win Big Bids Challenge is like an introduction.
Okay.
So for someone that's coming in on the ground floor, they know very little about government and corporate contracting. We, in essence, provide them with a framework to come in and to look at what's like the best ways. What are some tactics? What are some of the tools that we use?
Sure.
In corporate, and it just gives you like a taste, enough to pique your interest,
to
really see if this is something that you really want to do. We've had people that have participated in government contracts before that have not had success, but through our framework, they're able to see what it is that they're doing wrong.
Ah, got it. And so help me understand, what's the value? Obviously, government contracts, it sounds to me like that's a whole nother world, but maybe it's not. I mean, help me understand, like, what are some people that you've helped maybe that, like, help me understand what is a business that gets a government contract, like for payment processing. I mean, obviously every municipality in the country takes payments.
Absolutely.
So
and the government takes payments too.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
So I would, if I were someone,
you better believe they take payments. Getting their money.
That had a service whereby I was looking to serve the government in some capacity. The first thing I would look up is the NAC codes. It's the North American, it's like their code system, right?
Okay.
It's like the North American Industry Standard Code System.
Okay, for like a SIC code is a similar, it's what they call SIC codes, or in our industry, MCC codes, merchant category codes or whatever.
Exactly, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But what's nice is that's standardized, and they standardize it all across the US.
Right.
And I would look up codes for payment processing. In doing that, you'll be able to find your codes, and then you could start looking up contracts.
Like the stuff, because they're putting out like a RFQ or RFP or whatever?
Yes. So you can have like a request for, there's at least 10 different, we go through that more so in our proposal writing masterclass, where we break down
Man, you got it all.
the different kinds of proposals or requests for proposals that there are. Because it's very important to know what it is you're submitting for.
Yeah.
So some folks will go for RFQ and they're like, hey, well, did I win? It's like, it doesn't really work like that, right? It's almost like, the municipality or corporate entities really just looking for information before they submit an RFP. An RFP is a request
like an
for
exploratory
proposal.
committee. Like, what's even out there? Like,
Right.
how
And to
does
see
this
what
work?
the options are, to see
Yeah.
what pricing generally looks like. Sometimes they're trying to just narrow it down to a small pool of potential vendors.
Sure.
So they want to see what the opportunities are. I would not advise that necessarily for someone that's brand new
Yeah.
going into the situation or going into, proposal writing or looking to win bids. So ultimately, we look at...
Because what you're saying is the new person coming in, sure, I could go on there and I could search and find a list of, contracts out there. But there's somebody else that professionally does that.
Sure.
Right? That it may or may not be professional, right?
Sure.
And maybe that's true for all contracts. Maybe it's true for just, a portion of them. That I need to learn the process of creating the proper proposals to speak the language that they speak so that I'm at least putting myself in a position where I can compete.
Well, I would say that's a misnomer.
Okay, maybe not. Yeah,
Because
yeah.
sometimes you got to understand individuals that are assigned to read proposals, they're everyday people like you and me.
Sure.
They don't specialize in what it is that you do. So the best thing that you could possibly do is make sure that your proposal language is on a level that the everyday person can understand.
Sure.
Now, don't get it wrong.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about in our proposed writing masterclass is you do need, it's required that you have what we call a SME. I don't know if you've ever heard that, a subject matter expert.
Oh, subject matter expert. Okay,
Right.
SME. Yeah,
and
okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
And they come on board and they can write like the technical components if technical components are required for the submittal.
Sure.
Right? But ultimately, what you're looking for is you want to be able to to really know if someone understands or has mastered the art of what it is that they do.
Yeah.
It's their ability to bring it down to a grade level
Yeah.
that even a fifth grader can understand.
Sure. Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
You see? And but that's the goal though. When proposal writers are reading through your proposal submittal,
Yeah.
they want to know, is it easily evaluable? Like evaluatable?
Yeah, got it.
Right?
Got it.
Can they easily evaluate what it is that they wrote to what it is that you wrote? What they don't want to do is be flipping back and forth. So there's techniques to it. And I think people tend to overestimate what is actually needed so if anything, the bids is the question. So we say win big bids because why? You're becoming the answer to the question.
Right.
When you're in the process of winning big bids, you're becoming the answer to the world's problems.
Yeah.
That's how we see it.
Like, for example, I mean, there could be people watching this right now. Maybe they know you already. Maybe they've taken your class and they need a subject matter expert in payment processing. I mean, and they just didn't know we were going to do this podcast, you know? And they're like, hey, we could go after all these contracts and we need a subject matter expert that we could contact and use and partner with, right?
Right. I mean, second to identifying my NAT code, I would go in and I would look at previous contracts.
Yeah.
Where other, payment receivers have in fact gone out and bid on previous work before, just so that you get a general idea of what the scope is. I mean, naturally, you'll probably know what the scope is, but sometimes also, municipal entities, corporate entities will come to the table and not even fully understand what it is that they need.
Yeah.
So a large part of your responsibility in, issuing a proposal is ensuring that, first off, that you're answering their questions.
Sure.
But also giving them an opportunity to understand that you understand their problem more so than they do.
Yeah.
And giving them options that might be able to better meet their needs than what it is that they're asking for, especially if you can do it for cheaper and faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm thinking, I think in the government space that it would probably be much more common that the people you'd be dealing with would not have that context, especially in the payment processing industry. But in the corporate space, you would think that there are a lot of guys, at least in my estimation. I may be overestimating the corporate space, thinking that's, whatever, but I imagine like the local DMV and the municipality trying to procure payment processing for the DMV or procure payment processing for the local tax office or whatever. And they need some form of electronic payment, system, or it's the utility company that's owned by
or
the
even
municipality.
your local municipal building we'll need payment processing
Come
for
pay your fees.
licensing and all of the
all that stuff.
fees/taxes that they
It's all
impose upon us.
Don't get it twisted. It's all tax. It's funny. We're right here in Clearwater on the Pier 60. And as you walk down, as you get to the end, there's $1 fee to walk through the gate to go to the end of the pier. So you can walk to a certain point, but if you want to go to the end, it's $1. And so I was joking with the person, and one person got it, and the other person was like offended by it, right? My joke about like, look, it's a tax. Like, and they were like, no, it goes towards the hurricane. And I'm like, I don't think the hurricane accepts those funds.
No, just like tolls on the road.
Exactly.
I mean, it's
exactly right.
It's a fee to you know. But there's nothing free in life. But to me, if you want to go get your taxes back, that's one of the things that I suggest is go into that. Listen, I worked with a local firm for 30 months. That's as long as I could take it in this like standard super corporate structure. But one of the interesting things that I noticed is they worked heavily with government entities, and me just working for that short period of time and me taking that skill set and going directly to the government with my skill set and saying, look, this is what I can do for you, opened up doors and opportunities. And through those doors, see, a lot of people like to sell things that people don't want. So that's one of the things that you have to be realistic with is what you're trying to sell something that people actually want? That's one.
Right.
And especially when you're working in a space where all eyes, like there are a lot of eyes on the government. And a lot of people tend to think.
Accountability,
A lot of people tend to think, oh, I have to go to sam.gov. I have to operate on the federal level in order to be successful. Well, I'm going to tell you, all $21 million that I made last year, none of which came through the federal side. It is actually a lot easier for you to procure government contracts going through local and state.
I bet.
And a lot of eyes are all on the federal all the time, and that's not necessarily true.
So I mean, that's the blue whale, right? You would think, because you have to do so much. And I mean, not for nothing, but if you're just starting out, sure, could there maybe be some federal contracts you get? I guess. But depending on what you're doing, being able to serve a municipality sounds a lot more feasible than having to serve the entire federal government.
Well, what's nice,
depending on what you do.
What's nice is they're willing to give you a foot in the door. But also, there are certifications that actually can help elevate your the possibility of you winning a bid. So for instance, they have certifications for minorities, certifications for women, certifications if you are economically disadvantaged. And every municipality has their own certifications. So like I said, people tend to always look at the federal level and the federal certifications, oftentimes which require, that you have to be in business for 2 years and on it goes, right? And you have to produce all these tax returns, so on and so forth.
Red tape.
Exactly. But on the local level, oftentimes you'll realize the local municipalities want to encourage business growth. So a lot of that red tape is not there. So like even our local municipality, they're just starting to enforce certain aspects of that. But it's still not to the level as one would expect to, endure at higher levels.
Okay. So then those, because I guess these government contracts, they say like, well, a certain amount of the contract or a certain amount of the funds have to go towards businesses that have this certification or that certification. And and so that gives you a leg up.
Exactly. But what's great is a lot of what we teach also is strategic partnerships.
Exactly.
I would say that probably accounts for 90% of all of the income that we have made since our inception.
I bet.
Is partnering with other organizations that do work that works in tandem or that complements work that we do.
Okay.
But and we're living in a day and age now where it's very difficult to acquire good talent, right?
You ain't lying.
And a lot of people want to be in the space of becoming entrepreneurs. There's a lot of people, especially since the pandemic, that's walking into that space of entrepreneurship. And one of the things that we share, and we've partnered actually with a few other organizations that embrace this concept, is, bring in other entities to build up your team. So when you go after contracts, you're not going alone.
Right.
And you're not only working off of my history. I have 12 years worth of history in doing what it is that I do, utility staffing spaces.
Yeah.
But now I can bring someone else on that specializes in organizational development, and I can bring on someone else that specializes in finance. And now we're bringing, as a team, we're bringing our whole army of specializations to the team.
Right.
So it's almost like this, the way that I see it right now, I see it like a David and Goliath moment, where it's like, yeah, you exist, corporation.
Yeah.
Right? But there's several of us coming together.
Sure.
And we're forming teams specifically for a specific project. And that's how I've seen the big guys operate in this realm. But now when it's more of us and we have all of our certifications in line and we have all of, now we're actually tipping the scales in our favor.
Sure.
To be able to,
because they almost want to give it to the SMB size business instead of the big corporation many times. Because that might even be a certification. Hey, get the SMB certificate. If you're over this, then that puts you in a different, bracket or whatever. And we're going to prioritize giving it to smaller localized businesses.
Right. Well, but that's the ultimate goal, right? Like, how do you, like, on average, I think you have to make about, it depends too. So like during our challenge, what we do is we have our team members assess the size of their market.
Right.
Right. So that what is the greatest potential that you can make within your specific realm. Well, it's usually around $250 million, right? Is that number.
It's better than a sharp stick in the eye.
But imagine now us, rubbing shoulders with another firm that has that same 250 million and another firm that has that same 250 million.
Right.
We all are still able and capable of still remaining small business owners.
Yeah.
But now we're going after the work as if we are a big corporation.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. And I've seen large corporations do it, but especially now where more people are being, participating in entrepreneurship. People tend to think that they have to do it alone, and they do not.
Right.
Right. Operating and building teams is, I believe, the key to going after work and to growing and scaling your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are huge. I mean, in my business, I think I was great at sales, I suppose. I was able to go out and pull a door and go get some business, from a sales standpoint. I was great on that one-on-one sales. And then, kind of one day I was realizing I was tired,
Yeah.
And it came to the point where I was like, I may make less per sale, but I can 10x the sales by partnerships.
Absolutely.
Which is why we focus, heavily on partnership now, whether it be through recruiting agents to work with us to sell payment processing or referral partners that just serve business owners that are in the same sphere of influence as us. We've had a lot of success on new clients coming on board just because of the partnership piece.
Right.
And
yeah, we might need to have a talk about that.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I'm here. Let's talk. So you've obviously didn't, $21 million sounds like awesome. And I think, there's people sitting at home that are like $21 million. Wow, that's, great for them. Even me, I wouldn't even know what to tell you the value of our business is, but it's in the multiple $1 million, at this point from a valuation standpoint. We're not doing $21 million a year yet.
Okay. On your way.
On our way to a $21 million a day. But I think that the opportunity for people at home is there's some of them that are out there and they're thinking to themselves, I just want to make an extra $1,000, $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month. And not for nothing, you and I both know once you get a taste of that, right, then 10,000 is not a lot, right? 20,000 is not, you all of a sudden those numbers become much smaller because then you realize the scope that's out there and you're like, man, I'm literally just skimming off the skimmer at the top,
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody's looking to get started, where would you say, maybe not where would you start over again, but let's say you're in the position of someone that was, out there and they're listening to you right now, where could they start?
One of the things that I would say is I would really focus on just ensuring that what it is, that there's a market for what it is that I want to sell. See, once you know that there's a market,
Right.
and you position your business in that space,
Right.
and you develop your skill, really all it is about marketing after that.
Or and then in your case, shifting to where you're going after bids
Absolutely.
versus, trying to drum up business, from the open market, so to speak.
But it's between developing your skill set and identifying strategic partners.
And so, for example, you mentioned utility staffing.
Yes.
Okay, so when you talk about your core business and the contracts from a corporate standpoint or a government standpoint that you were going after, it was in the utility staffing space?
So let me say this too. So legally, in the eyes of, the government, a business is a person. A business is an individual.
Entity. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So just like we are people,
Right.
and we morph and change, our business actually has morphed and changed.
No doubt.
So without going too far into it,
Yeah.
it was just me in the beginning.
Oh, I've been there.
And I was doing utility billing optimization.
Yeah.
So we looked at our local municipality. We would look at all of the bills. We would identify, if there were issues or anomalies in the billing. Clearly, there was an issue where the municipality called on us because they felt as if they needed that support.
Got it. Okay.
So in doing that, they discovered they had a 40% drop off between what was being produced at the water treatment plant versus what was coming out of the sewer plant, adjusted. Because they have all their numbers,
Sure.
The engineers have all their things, but nonetheless, there was a 40% drop off.
Okay.
In seeing the difference, the delta between what they were producing, what they were calculating as being consumed, and what was coming out through the sewer system, they had determined that money or water, either someone's stealing a lot of water,
Yeah.
or there's something wrong with the distribution system, meaning the networks of pipes, there's a bunch of leaks. Well, we didn't have any sinkholes or anything significant happening.
Okay.
And the last part is, or the water meters. There's something going on with the water meters, which
Yeah,
are the
man.
cash registers. Well, that opened up a door for us, an opportunity. So we worked alongside the meter manufacturer, and we actually learned how to test water meters. And in testing water meters, we realized like 80% of the water meters that we were testing on a specific side of the city were failing due to water quality issues.
Wow.
That's an opportunity. So then what do we do?
Listen, that's a whole case study in, my brain is going in 1,000, but of just find the problem, solve the problem.
Yes,
Find the problem, solve the problem. That's entrepreneurship.
exactly.
And get paid.
Exactly. So then what do? We got a truck and a couple of guys. Then we had them going out through the city, and the city said, well, this is a bigger problem than we thought.
Heck yeah.
And then they said, hey, we'll give you more. We trained more people. We had like a smaller team. We had like 2 or 3 trucks. We had
Yeah.
like a team of like 9 guys. They would go out on the day-to-day. They were doing meter testing, repair, replacement, the whole bit. Like we had just expanded to meet that need.
Man, I tell you.
And, our town was small.
Yeah.
But that was enough work to keep our teams busy.
Tell me about it.
Right? So in doing that, then we got to learn about larger players that do meter deployments all around the country.
Wow. Yeah. So it opens up like a whole nother, you're like peeking up over oh, wait, there's a whole other world over there.
And then we got into water. Then we got into electric meters. And what that did was we realized, well, they move every few years. So then what we decided to do was to provide staffing for that service.
Got it. Makes
so
sense.
we, in essence, have, a lot of the managerial staff, and then they go out, they do the trainings, and then we have the team. So every now and again, we'll reach out to those team members, and it's just like recycling. And we go from like arguably city to city, like neighboring cities.
Yeah.
Right? So we'll have like these huge projects, we'll do those for a while, and then we'll move on to the next municipality and so on and so forth. And that's kind of how the game goes. But my point of mentioning that is don't be afraid to venture out into new spaces.
Yeah.
Because that's where your answer lies.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what the next thing for us will be, or if there will be anything else that we decide to get into, or arguably, maybe as a company, we might just go back into actually doing the meter replacements ourselves.
Sure.
As opposed to just providing the staffing. But you continue to flow, and you continue to grow, and you continue to operate. And every time that you grow, you learn something new. You learn something that you didn't before. But had we not aligned ourselves with other corporations that were much bigger than us, we would have never had those opportunities to experience that. So now our resume, literally, it truly is a Woosh experience, like what we experienced.
Yeah.
Right? We experienced something where, we just had like 9 guys, and then we went up to 15, and then we went up to like about 100 guys, and then we went up to like 400 guys. It can happen just like that. And that's the thing that we oftentimes talked about. Like we have several different programs. One is like Level Up, that's transitioning from the workforce into entrepreneurship. And then we have Executive Wing for small business, high-level professionals, right? That are looking to do the thing. They're looking to get all the information so that they can skyrocket. We're looking to skyrocket those businesses.
Need some rocket fuel.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But literally it happens just like that. So, but if you don't set your business up to expect that increase.
Oh, man.
That's where the stress comes
Yeah,
on.
100%.
That's where, so you have to build your business. And I know it sometimes can be painstakingly, or it can feel slow.
Oh, yeah.
But if you don't build your business properly, when those opportunities present yourself, you'll either have to reject the opportunity because you won't have the capacity to house it or to manage it, or you'll take it on and it'll just stress you out.
You get a bad reputation too.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
Well, and the exponential curve, this whoosh that you're talking about, it starts out like this.
Slow.
And then all of a sudden, whoosh,
exactly.
and it seems like that's the curve for all of these things, is that you're doing that prep work. Like I know, I don't know where we'll be at when this is posted, right? But I know where we're at on YouTube today. Mm-hmm. And it's not where we want to be, right? We're trying to grow and scale the YouTube and improve viewership, all of that, and serve those people that are watching, right? And the way we increase that is by getting better at serving them, right?
Absolutely.
Providing them with the things that they're looking for, because the trade-off is their attention, right? They're watching this in order to get that. But it's one of those things where like you just have to commit to doing the work itself, doing the things and being consistent and being disciplined, because one of those is going to be that whoosh.
Well, you know what too? There's many ways to be mediocre. All right.
Big facts.
And I think it was discussed in I want to say it's Dr. Benjamin Hardy's book, 10X is better than 2X.
Yeah.
Right. There's
Which is
crazy, right? There's many ways to be mediocre and to operate in a mediocre way.
Yeah.
And there are very few ways to operate in a space of excellence. And the quicker you find that path, the quicker you get your Woosh experience.
Yeah.
Woosh is an acronym. I don't even know if I mentioned that.
I don't think you did. Yeah. I understood whoosh as soon as you said it. So at least that's good,
But Woosh is caused by the acronym Woosh, right? Who's holy, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent,
come on,
supernatural help.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Like it's when you're operating and the wind is behind your back, that is what's going to propel you forward. And no matter how hard you try to have a whoosh-like experience, but you decide, especially as a believer, and you decide to take your God out of the situation. It's so amazing to me that in the business world, we want people who are honest. They're dignified, they're just.
Yeah.
They're all the things that the word is calling us to be.
Yep.
But yet we want to remove God from the equation.
100%.
Right? Even in speaking about, did you know that economics, the study of economics, actually operated under theology and not business?
I didn't know that. The only cool fact I knew about economics is it's the study of incentives. People think it's the study of the flow of money, but it's the study of what gets people to do certain things, right? It's like the incentives. So that's only, I could kind of make that connection there.
Yeah. But because the study of economics in and of itself was so good at becoming a predictor about how markets moved is why they moved it into the business realm.
Interesting. Okay.
As opposed to operating under theology.
Yeah.
So there's so much that is like taken from, a theologic perspective. And this is what I tend to view as my theory, right?
Sure.
Of the enemy taking things from on high and attributing it to himself.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Or attribute
blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
And even the concept of business in and of itself. Like I said before, the underpinnings of business is that you are one that is operating righteously and you're living a life where people believe, like back in the day, you can do business on a handshake.
Yeah.
We could sit down on the back of a napkin and we can decide this is how we want to do business.
Yeah, these are the terms, yeah.
Now we have contracts and all of these things and a court to deal with all of the issues associated with operating and running a business. But the reality is that if we all got to a place to realize that it's God's design in me that is really speaking to God's design in you, and that's how we're able to flow.
Right.
Let me say it like that.
Right.
We're able to flow and we're able to do business in a way where I'm operating in your best interest and you're operating in my best interest.
Sure.
That's what makes business work.
Oh, win-win. Absolutely. Well, what you said is very profound. I think you probably do realize how profound it is about how we want all of these character traits in business people, but then somehow we're taking the Lord out of it. And then we get a different result and we're surprised, right? Which doesn't seem like you should be that surprised. But it also, I think, the whole idea that rich people are evil, or that they're, not to say there aren't evil rich people.
Sure.
But like, at least, and maybe it's part of my what is it called, myopia, right? Myopic, view of things. But the high level entrepreneurs that I've been meeting in my journey, the best ones, the most successful ones, I would say, it'd be hard for me to think of ones that aren't, but are good, godly people. They just are. And I don't know what I expected. I don't think I don't know that I had an expectation. I just knew that I wanted to meet and network with high-level entrepreneurs, right? That if that's what I want to be, then I need to go be around those people. It's kind of a basic.
What's so crazy? Like, I guess it wasn't until I began operating in spaces where I work at conferences and I speak boldly about my faith. That I began to connect with other people of faith. Yeah. That maybe I didn't necessarily know were people of faith, not because of anything that they said or did, but I think there is a presumption that we're going to leave that part outside.
Yeah, leave
the
that
door.
At home. Yeah, we're at the business conference.
But for me, I bring it to the forefront, and I bring it to the forefront because you have. Yeah. If you don't have a sense of who I am, or even who I say I am, you're not able to hold me to the stake as to who I claim to be.
That's right.
Right? And I do think a large part of Christianity is holding each other accountable for who we say we are, who we say we believe our divine creator, so on and so forth. But there's that tug and there's that pull, and it'll always be there until the end of time. But I do believe if people of faith began to stand up for what it is that they believe in, and I believe if people of faith operate, or people who claim to be of faith operated in what they say, wealth is just a byproduct of what they say or who they say they are. I've grown 100%. Up, in a church life where I didn't see that at all. As a matter of fact, when I first started my business, and my first year in business, I made over $320,000 my first year. Nice. What's so funny? In all of our promos, because, I teach people what I do, I kept saying 250 because I don't know why that was the number that stuck in my head until I went back and actually looked at my tax return for that year. It was 320. But I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I remember when I went to go buy my house, my parents were like, "Are you sure?" Because, if you get in trouble, like, we can't help you.
Yeah, like, yes, we can't help you with that.
But I had, at that point, I had been in the space of business for about 4 or 5 years. I was confident that in the least bit, I'll be able to afford my home. But that's to tell you, sometimes when you make moves, it's not for you to share.
Yeah.
with other people.
That's
Because what you don't want
You got to share
to
with the
happen.
right people.
Well, the right people.
Right.
Yes, I will agree to that.
Yeah.
I just didn't want anyone dissuading me from what I knew God was calling me to do.
Right.
And in me walking in that, I actually received more faith because God had given me more confirmation as I kept walking with. And I'm going to tell you, being in business is, I would say, one of the biggest foundational object lessons of what a faith walk looks like.
Yeah.
Like there's no other space that you can operate in where there's no rules to business.
That's right. Well, it's funny that you say it. So as we recruit agents, one of the number one things that as part of my little spiel to these guys is like, look, integrity is our number one value. Mm-hmm. We operate in a space where, credit card processing is complicated by design.
Right.
It was created by banks, right? And credit card companies. We all know how much we trust those guys.
Right.
And we are in a position to where we have more information than 99% of the people that we talk to. And so the one thing that we need to do is just do what we said we were going to do.
Yes.
Because at the other end of all that, we could get people, sign this, sign that, whatever. And they're signing with us because they're trusting us. I mean, very rarely is there, like you mentioned the contract, right? We have these contracts nowadays. Mm-hmm. And Myron talks about how a covenant is an agreement built on mutual trust versus a contract is a agreement built on mutual distrust.
Absolutely.
And and I think that there's a side thing to this is if it's worth handshaking, it's worth signing as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And I only mention that to say that clarity is important because any disagreement that I have ever had in my life in business where there was an actual strife disagreement always boiled down to
it wasn't in writing.
Well, number one is it wasn't in writing, and because it wasn't in writing, there was a misunderstanding of what the actual terms were, right? Like I was operating from this premise, they were operating from that premise, and then, or somewhere down the line, because it wasn't in writing, and when it's in writing, it can only be changed when it's in writing, right? Here comes this distrust thing that they assumed that this term had changed or something like that, Right. And so those types of things can get you into a bind. And so I do mention that it isn't, if it's good enough to shake hands on, I think it is good enough to.
Oh no, and I'm totally in total agreement with that.
Right.
And I believe in especially when you're working with the government, they tend to be
overly
incredibly clear.
Yeah.
You have governance documents, and you're identifying who's responsible for what, when, where,
right.
Why.
Which
how.
all that is about clarity.
Absolutely.
Which like the first page of a lot of most contracts is a definitions page. Just so we're not confused, when I say credit card processing,
this is what I mean.
This is what I mean.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. But there is no blueprint for business.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
Business is one of those things where, which tells me that it's spiritual in nature. Right? Business is one of those things because the tide of what people demand today may shift to what they demand tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Right? What do they call that in economics? The invisible hand.
Yeah.
Right? That's moving and changing what people like, and so the rules
I wonder
are
what
constantly,
that invisible hand might.
Well, I wonder what it could be.
Spiritual forces.
And it is God that causes His will to happen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? So, a lot of the trends and a lot of the shifts, all of that, especially when I read about that, especially in economics, it all just speaks spiritual language to me.
Yeah.
Right? That
sure.
there are hands, invisible hands that are moving.
Yeah.
That are, lightning or magnetizing people's hearts, right?
Yeah.
Like a magnetic force.
Sure.
That's
creating that demand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But, nonetheless, I think it's incredible for young entrepreneurs to know, especially those of faith to know. Jesus says it like this in Matthew chapter 5. You are salt.
Yeah.
And you are light.
That's right.
Now, if you look at this, salt, when you pour it over your food, it'll virtually like dissolve into your food unless you're putting too much.
Yeah, just taking it
But
on.
it'll dissolve into your food. But your food can go from absolutely being bland to full of flavor.
Yeah.
What does salt do? It enhances all of the flavor.
Yeah.
Like God's desire is for us business people, entrepreneurs, people of faith, that when we are positioned where we are, we enhance the flavor of the businesses that we're in. Even if you're a W-2 employee,
Yeah.
you should be that unmovable employee.
Yeah.
Where it's like you are a cornerstone of that business, or you are a cornerstone of that movement or that project, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right? And then he says that you are light. He says a light should not be hidden under a basket.
That's right.
Now, I get into what I call like imagery journaling.
Okay.
So as I read something specifically in the Bible, sometimes some of these topics can be really tough.
Sure.
I actually draw it. So I actually drew like a basket and I put a light through it. And one of the things I realized is the light shines through the basket.
It does.
It's not designed to be,
No.
but no matter where you are as an entrepreneur, as a person of faith, you will shine through.
Yeah.
And he says, but a lamp was designed to be on a lampstand, to bring light and to shed light to the whole house.
Yeah.
Right? So wherever you are, truth, the light is truth.
That's right.
Light emanates from.
That's right.
And what does that tell you about who we should be and what we're called to do? We're called to be people that are knowledgeable, that are wise,
Yeah.
that know. So what does that tell us that we should be doing from day to day? Of course, studying the word, but not just the word, studying all manners of life,
Right.
right? So that when we're put in a position, we can become light.
Yeah. It's like with Solomon writing things about trees and birds and like, you're just like, his.
Because
What?
there's object lessons about life in everything.
Consider the ant, it's like.
And notice, in the beginning, light was not created.
Right.
He said, let there be,
Yeah.
because he, in and of himself, was light.
Yeah.
So it's like, let there be light.
Right. And the light was the light of men and the darkness comprehended it not. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. and the light dispels the darkness. I mean, it's, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot there. I think in business, I call it, and I got this from a good friend of mine named Dan Schock. He called it marketplace ministry, and he didn't come up with it, but marketplace ministry is something that, through his, discipleship, you could say, it just imprinted on my heart how important it is to bring, God back into the marketplace. Because all of everything consists of him, and by him, all of it, holds together. And it's like the fact that we're able to even do this and how much business principles, I mean, that's one of the things that, Myron talks about is business principles in the Bible, and how we as believers have bought into some demonic lies about money, about business, about wealth, that are causing people to live in abject poverty, thinking that it's some sort of a virtue, when the Bible says the exact opposite, right? And not to say that, because there's those that will argue with that and be like, well, God, you're saying God wants you to be rich, and then if you're not rich, that you're evil or something. Obviously, we're not saying those things, right?
Well, it goes in line, and I'll wrap up with this.
Yeah.
It goes in line with this. Matthew chapter 4 is in essence, at the end of Matthew chapter 3, it talks about Jesus making the decision to become baptized. And we know at 30 years old, if you're going into the priesthood, that is that time.
Yep.
And that's when Christ began his ministry.
It's consecration, yeah.
And that's when he went and he got baptized. Now, the first thing that John the Baptist said is, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Jesus comes, he gives his life. He gets baptized and he begins his ministry. Now, what the word says in Matthew chapter 4, it says that Christ was driven out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil.
That's right.
But in that process, he was called to fast and pray for 40 days. During my darkest times when I was laid off from my job, I fasted and I prayed for 40 days. My back was up against the wall. I was renting a room. I gave up my apartment.
Wow.
And I asked God to give me a job. And that's exactly what he gave me. But I'll go into that. I'll go into that in a second. But Jesus was driven into the wilderness to fast for 40 days.
Yeah.
Right. And during the 40-day fast, right, towards the end or at the end, he was tempted by Satan. Now, what was the first temptation?
Yeah, it was food.
A lot of people tend to think that it was food.
Okay.
Notice what Satan says. He says, if thou be the Son of God.
Identity.
Identity.
Yeah.
And that is why in the church.
That's right.
And that is why believers have held on to these lies. They're called strongholds for so long. Because if the enemy could make you believe that you are something that you are not.
Yeah. Or that you're not what you are.
Or that you're not what you are, then the battle is already won.
That's right.
Because you won't even try to go after everything that God has called you to be from since the beginning.
Because be is the first step. Before you can do, you have to be. And before you can have, you have to do.
So if thou be the Son of God, turn these stones into bread.
Yeah.
And then he did it again. He took Jesus to the top of the temple and he said, throw yourself down. See, oftentimes, right, when people are going through things, the first thing that they're thinking about is they just want to give up.
Yeah.
They just don't want to be
throw
here
themselves
anymore.
down.
But remember, the enemy's job is to destroy. But notice what he said again in Matthew chapter 4. He said, if thou be the Son of God, throw yourself down.
Yeah.
Right? Because the angels will lift you up. And then Jesus says, he goes on to say, so he used the word, right?
Right.
If we don't know this word,
we
won't even know who we are.
To be able to do the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people disagree with me. But the word is just a crutch. The word is just, it's a book. It's a book of books, right? The word is just there to get you to do what? To have a relationship with God. So that when he's talking to you, you can clearly hear him and you can clearly identify what he's calling you to be. But if you don't even know who he's calling you to be, how can you start your ministry?
Right. It's like the framework, right? It's like the skeleton of everything to where everything else comes onto it.
Yeah. So just any of your audience members, if you're questioning yourself, if you're walking around with the imposter syndrome, it's the enemy asking you if.
That's right. That's right. And now that I'm thinking, because I've always associated bread being the first temptation to Jesus with Adam and Eve and food being the temptation in the garden.
I think the first thing that the enemy really questioned is,
did God really say, right?
Yes.
So,
but I think it's more or less...
Which is an identity question about God because God cannot lie, right? So I'm just trying to equate that because I see something in that identity thing that you just mentioned. I'm just trying to put the pieces together.
But also, I don't even think that Eve understood the power that she held.
Yeah.
She is the mother of all living people. She's
Everything.
the mother.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't even think she believed or understood. And I say believe or understood the power that she held, because it doesn't necessarily, just because the Bible doesn't mention things doesn't mean that it wasn't there. Right. But we can only go by what it says.
Well, like Noah's wife is also the mother of all living creature or all living men and women today, but we don't even know her name, right? So just because she existed, I mean, we got Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So
you know what? I'll take you up on that.
Yeah,
we can have a little Bible study about that. that you just opened up a whole nother can of worms by your statement right there. But we'll leave it there. Here's
the important thing, and I think that this is what's cool. What I find is cool is that for every person that's out there in business, identity is important. And whether they're selling payment processing or they're going and they're doing municipal, they're testing water meters, right? Whatever it is that this business person has set themselves to do, the thing that they're doing is not who they are. Before they can ever get to do that thing, they have to become the person, right? And that's why that be, do, have piece is important. And that's why the identity piece in the Lord is important, and having the confidence. Because like to me, the idea of servicing the government sounds like such a crazy big, thing.
It's just being in business. That's all it is.
And here you're telling me that I'm actually, primed up.
My experience with, working with corporations versus working with the government feels the same.
Yeah. Well, especially since big corporations, right? I mean, we're talking.
I don't know if to say big corporations, but you know, when you're working, business is business.
Yeah, you're right.
Period.
Business,
It's a problem and there's a solution.
Right.
And I think once we all identify that, everything else in between that is just kind of like the tactics.
Yeah.
Like, what does it take to get her done?
Yeah. And if you are the person, then you'll figure out the tactics.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
You're right. That's a good place to start.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming to sit with me. I tell you what, we'll probably have to do a part 2 at some point, you know, because I know I'll see you again because we do this periodically. But if we want people to be able to learn more about your challenge or about how to take their business and service big corporations or win big bids from the government or from corporations, where would I send that person?
They can certainly go to winbigbids.challenge.com. We're coming out with the Win Big Bids book this fall.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots.
See, next time we'll be able to put the book right there.
Oh yeah.
Look, everybody. The Win Big Bids book.
And then we have our Win Big Bids masterclasses. Right now we have about a series of 6 different masterclasses that we offer throughout the year. And then we have our Win Big Bids Mastermind. So it's a whole big thing. But I would just say, check us out at winbigbids.challenge.com. I think that's going to be a great start for them to learn more about us. Or then you can even check out the woosheffect.com. Woosh with 3 O's.
Okay.
And that pretty much, points out the full conglomerate, like the full umbrella of what it is that we do. So like, I know in September, we're also going to be looking to do our 40-day fast and prayer. And that's like, nobody's charging for fast and prayer, right?
Yeah.
But I want people to get into...
They're already paying.
But I want them to everyday people to get into that mode where they begin to realize Jesus fasted and prayed so that we would fast and pray.
Right.
And
100%.
Fasting might not be totally from food. It might be from other things.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's us looking at our relationship with our Creator. That's us focusing on our state of being and asking God to say, what is it that you would have me to do so that I can go out and become salt and light? Yeah.
It's funny. My wife is been fasting and she's reading fasting books right now. Fasting is the topic in my house right now. It's kind of funny.
Oh, wonderful.
So we might have to check out your 40-day fast and prayer thing. All right, and then if they want to find you on social media, Instagram, what's your preferred social media?
All handles are at AlisonEtinoff.com.
Alison at Noff, N-O-F?
Etinoff. So Alison.
Okay.
One L.
At Noff. Got it. Yeah. Sorry.
Alison so everything, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of the things. It's
all of the things. And I'll put a link in the description to all of that stuff and we'll go there. But thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. Yeah. No, this has been great. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much.
And so you guys have heard it here. This has been, kind of mind blowing. We've been, it's funny how my conversations always end up back onto the Lord. I don't know what it is, just the people that I find always ends up that way. But I really do believe that is step 1 in becoming the person that God has called you to be, is to go ask him, God, who am I? Or who did you call me to be? What are you calling me to do? And before you can go be effective in the business world and in the marketplace, you first need to know who you are, or else they'll eat your lunch out there. I'll tell you that, because you got to really know who you are, be grounded. Praise God. But bless you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys can take some of the nuggets that we found here and repeat this success. And we'll see you on the next one.